My grandma always said, no one is born with a mustache. You become a man. And Dave Canales understands that, and that is the mastery that has been behind the scenes at Carolina Panthers training camp. And the reports slowly have trickled in. We've slowly learned the approach that Dave Canales is taking with first-year wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan. And you know what? I love it. I love the tough love because behind the self-help books and the big smile and the bright eyes and the bushy tail, deep down in Canales is a coach. Much like Pete Carroll, who he worked under for years, Canales understands that pushing his guys who can take it to the limits is the number one way to get the talent out of the player. And Canales has been preparing T-Mac to storm Normandy. He's been preparing the rookie to be the number one wide receiver in this system. Bryce Young is targeting T-Mac at camp more than anyone else by far. And specifically on plays where he's going downfield when they're stretching the field. That is the guy he's throwing to. Equally, they've brought in a lot of these corners. Corey Thornton, I mentioned him yesterday, but these big-bodied physical corners. And not everyone's going to stay, but I look at the physical nature of the corners, and now I'm looking at some of the corners that the Browns have that T-Mac's been going up against, and I go, this all makes sense. This all makes sense. It's no different than high school football. Bully the freshmen. The freshman's in. Everyone's going to hit him a little harder. You know, they tackle him to the ground and they use his body to stand up. Carry our jockstrap. It's back to the locker room. It's not that far, but it is a microcosm of that. And I think it is good for this player, the mold of T-Mac. Big 12 wide receiver. And I've mentioned the numbers of top 10 wide receivers who have been selected since 2021. They average as rookies 79 catches, 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Now, most of these guys are SEC guys. They're Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, SEC players. SEC and Big Ten now. The talent that comes from the SEC and the Big Ten is superior to everywhere else in the country. And I'm not saying that the Big 12 is a knock on T-Mac, but it's not like he was lining up at Ohio State or at LSU or at Alabama or one of these programs that just constantly is the pinnacle of college football. And Arizona is no laughingstock, don't get me wrong. But this is a player who is a 5-star recruit, 2 consecutive 1,300-yard seasons at Arizona. And I really don't think in his athletic career at all, T-Mac has ever been challenged. I think he's been so dominant. Much like JT Sanders, who thrived at Texas and was a 5-star recruit in high school. I think Canales learned from Jatavian Sanders. He saw Sanders and saw all this untapped potential. Sanders lost all the weight. Now he looks like a different player. I think Canales looks at what happened with Sanders last year and sees McMillan, who's going to be on pace to be a superstar and all that, but he's learned his lesson and now he's saying, okay, we really need to push this guy to his limits day one. Day one. So let's hear from the coach himself, Dave Canales, talking about the rookie wide receiver. Here's the clip.
On the play that he had a touchdown that he dropped today, and he was kind of running a corner route, and Bryce kind of, instead of leading him to the back pylon, Bryce kind of threw it right behind the defender, and I think that was a new one, for T-Mac, because he was like, oh, shoot, this is a good spot for it. Bryce kind of saw it, so I was excited about that. Bryce turned around to me, we're both smiling, and we would love him to catch that ball. He will.
First of all, I love this clip from Canales because it proves to me the relationship between Bryce Young and Canales has grown so much. We're going to talk about that in depth Saturday. But for now, I love this concept that it was T-Mac's fault. Bryce Young and Canales both knew that this ball was placed in the right spot. But like I just mentioned, T-Mac was running by guys in college. You watch some of the film, and it's just like, are the guys that are covering him even trying? That's why I said if he was from Alabama or Texas or one of these big schools, he probably would have faced more competition on a week in and week out basis than he did at Arizona. He didn't have to make some of these plays. Now he has NFL caliber corners draped on him. Bryce Young makes a heck of a throw. But T-Mac's like, what's going on? Because normally I'm beating the crap out of these guys. They're 10 yards behind me, and I don't actually have to go across my body or catch a ball in a location that I'm not used to. And I think this is a microcosm of what you're hearing about at camp. Here's Joe Person. He wrote this article last Friday, but I think the headline really resonates. Panthers wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan's first camp. Some good, some bad. Still confident. Person goes on to write, those highlights don't show the uglier, grittier side of practice for the rookie wideout. Talking about the highlights the NFL has posted of McMillan that have gone viral. His first training camp, Person writes, has featured plenty of ups and downs. Now again, on Wednesday, the 6th, Joe Person again reporting down, cleats down in Charlotte, watching practice, watching McMillan getting ready for the Browns who are in town. And so it was again for the number 8 overall pick, who dropped a pass in the end zone during the joint practice with Cleveland. But he did redeem himself a couple of minutes later, pulling down a touchdown pass from Bryce Young. And I believe he was referring to that play Canales was also talking about. It's not all green pastures with McMillan. It's not. And I went into camp with the idea that this was going to be complete, utter dominance. Even J.C. Horn was going to be getting dominated by T-Mac. I thought just off the shelf, this guy, plug and play, was going to be ready to go. But it is a slower process for the development of the young wide receiver. There's been some ups and downs. There's been some drop passes. There's been some things that he hasn't seen at the college level. I give the Carolina Panthers all the credit in the world for going and finding an answer at wide receiver. They have failed year in and year out. They have tried to band-aid that position with the likes of Terrace Marshall Jr., Jonathan Mingo. They took Leggett last year. He had a subpar season. Go and find your answer. Go and actually invest and get the first wide receiver you're confident in since DJ Moore. The Panthers get an infinite amount of credit. And I'm not banking on T-Mac having a 1,200-yard season. I'm not doing that yet. Let's watch Friday. We will react on Saturday. Let's let this thing play out. Let's let this situation breathe a little bit. I think we all need to let T-Mac breathe. Now, I have high standards. They took him at 8th overall. They took him to come in and be Bryce Young's number 1 target. And Bryce Young is feeding him that way. Bryce Young is looking for T-Mac. T-Mac's your number 1 wide receiver. There's no questions about that. But before we get married to a take, before we start doing dances in the end zone, like we have in the past for Terrace Marshall and Jonathan Mingo, people literally saying these guys are Calvin Johnsons, let's not do that with T-Mac. Let's sit here and be rational, analyze the situation, and let's be grateful. Because listen to these headlines. Jonathan Mingo in Dallas. Oh my gosh, I was laughing so hard. What I'm doing is I'm creating a scrapbook of all the former Panthers wide receiver headlines. So I started today with Jonathan Mingo. Cat Crave. Cowboys quickly learning what Panthers fans already knew about Jonathan Mingo. Inside the Star. Cowboys minicamp. Don't buy into early hype on Jonathan Mingo in all caps. Latest update shows Panthers really fleeced Cowboys in Jonathan Mingo's swap. Of course, that trade came in 2024 when the Panthers got the middle round pick for Jonathan Mingo. Aren't you grateful? I am so grateful that this isn't the team this year. Like, Bryce Young is not going to be reliant on Terrace Marshall and Jonathan Mingo and now 35-year-old Adam Thielen. Like, this isn't your receiving core anymore. I might not be as high on Leggett as you are, but you have him. You're comfortable. He can... I think he's too talented not to be good. I think at the least he's going to be one of these really good gadget receivers that you can throw to underneath and he can take it to the house on crossers and routes like that. You have this phenom rookie T-Mac who is taken to the top 10. We all know how good players in the top 10 are. And then you still have Thielen. You have Jimmy Horn Jr. Can't forget about him. Don't you have faith? The Tone has faith. The Tone has faith in this receiving core. That is it for this segment. Thank you so much for tuning in. Saturday, we come back, and we are breaking down the entire preseason game against the Cleveland Browns. Tune in on Friday night to watch the Panthers take on Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns. That's an amazing headline.